Because if you're like, well, if you're an Ardling, but then because of their adventurer traits, you can have like vestigial wings. Are Ardlings with wings different from Ardlings with squirrel tails? Like,
next question.
Yes, over here. Right, Haven. In episode BF-12, you were battling barbarians while riding a winged Appaloosa. Yet in the very next scene, my dear, you're clearly atop a winged Arabian. Please to explain it.
Hello, everyone. That was Daniel Kwan. Well, before Professor Frink, that was Daniel Kwan. And he worked on Wizards of the Coast's awful Candlekeep Mysteries book a few years back. That clip was during a roundtable with a few of Wizards of the Coast's past and perhaps future cultural consultants. And they were discussing a controversial, quote-unquote, issue that erupted last week. You see, Wizards of the Coast thought that they would finally solve their problem of constantly being hounded by a couple thousand leftists who think that orcs are black people by jettisoning the word race from the next iteration of D&D. They replaced it with the word species, or at least that's what they're proposing to do. Now, I did a video on this, which I will link to at the end, and some of us predicted that this change would not satisfy the small group of cultural Marxists who are very loud on Twitter. And let's just say that they did not let us down. A few days after, and already the people who can never be satisfied, because outrage is their business, they were up in arms because, yes, apparently species is just as appalling as race is. Unbelievable.
that like switching from race shows that Wizards is acknowledging the problem with the term race, but moving to species doesn't resolve like the underlying issue of like essentialism in D&D, and it just brings up different problems. It's like, hey, let's take one really problematic term and then replace it with another problematic term that's going to cause other problems and maintain the exact same problems.
All right, so you cannot take anyone seriously that uses the term problematic unironically. So there, Daniel, who I think might be a cultural consultant himself, proves the perils of negotiating with these leftist lunatics. This is a game with funny dice, and occasionally good stories can be told in it. But as long as the people are having a good time with friends, that's really all that counts. It's not supposed to be a political manifesto, but unfortunately it is for a lot of people. Especially, I hate to say it, some of the newer ones entering the hobby. Here's the thing about the game. You can make of it what you will by using the tools given to you. At least that was the case in every past edition of D&D. But these guys are not honest brokers. They're not interested in D&D as a game. And you have to kind of get that through your head that, this is the case. I mean, you wouldn't want to be anywhere near this guy's table. He and his friends aren't there to play, per se. They are there to change the world. The outside world. And they view the game as simply a tool in their war on culture. It's very simple. They don't care about the roots of D&D. They just want to use it as a vehicle to more or less attack who they see as problematic players. It seems like they go after white people quite a bit. I'll leave it to you to decide why that's the case. And this also includes the founder of the game, Gary Gygax. Mr. Kwan has another video where he and another man go through Oriental adventures. And it's exactly what you'd expect. They wanted Gary in 1980 to obey all of the cultural sensitivities folks like him pretend can do harm to people nowadays. Imagine being so weak that a good faith attempt at capturing a side of the world that back then most players didn't even think of in their games could actually hurt someone. Daniel is convinced that terms like race and species are nothing but loaded guns.
But the exercise here is, how do we categorize things and minimize harm to others?
All right, so what would make these zealots satisfied? You have to watch here because, as I mentioned, They view all of this as part of a broader war on culture. And as we know, they want to control your speech and your thought. And we have to push back against their point that words can somehow hurt people. So remember, too, that these are the most racist people in the world, very sneakily so. I always chuckle when I see a young person in a Che Guevara t-shirt, the darling of the left. Go back and see what old Che thought of black people and gay people. And these same folks seem to idolize the Chinese Communist Party as well. And that's the same party that demands Western movie studios remove black actors that are featured prominently on movie posters that appear in China. And these RPG leftists view minorities as creatures. I reject this. And so should you. At every opportunity. Instead, they want to pollute the discourse with gobbledygook that you as a reasonable person know is silly. But they're very effective at using fear to get people to accept such silliness.
I think that it should be ancestry. And then if you want like a sub ancestry, you could do origin. Because if you did origin, it would still align with like a sorcerer's draconic origin. Right? Yeah. If you align with that, like a sorceress origin, then the term can kind of still work. But the thing is, like, if they can make the change from race to species, anything else they use in D&D is subject to change.
So using the term ancestry implies that humans have this absurd commonality with, tieflings, dwarves, elves, orcs, goblins, dragonborn, Ifriti, lizard people, kobolds. Shall I go on? I mean, how absurd do you think they'd get?
Species is a life form. It's an inherently biological thing.
Yeah, I'm interested in like the life forms. Like, what if you play like an undead character where you're technically not alive?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, where does the madness stop? These are some serious, up their own ass ivory tower types. And listen to some of the things that they want to implement in this little game of ours.
Every individual is an ancestry. And instead of making them subcategories of other ancestries, you go upward. So the grouping becomes higher order instead of subcategories. So like even a mixed character would be a particular ancestry.
Yeah.
They're their own thing. They are their ancestry.
Just have a bajillion different ancestries.
But they're part of
you would literally go into Linnaean taxonomy.
Does this sound remotely fun to you? Who your players are in relation to others is something that they obsess over. But the average player, at least up to a few years ago, wouldn't have even given this a second thought. Just nobody cares, right? With good reason. It's an imaginary game about swords and knights and elves and trolls. But to them, it's just another battlefield. And they get a perverse thrill about getting you to think twice before doing something that you always used to do. And when you hesitate, they win. And that's why it's imperative in your game that you feel free to run goblins and orcs any way you want. If you want to run them the way they used to be presented, as evil creatures, you should. When you do that, if they can only see this, well, that's their problem, isn't it? You also need to call them out on this every chance you get. Share videos like this one and others out there and spread the word. Let people who have that weird feeling about all this in the back of their head, but maybe are too afraid to speak out, let them know that they're not alone, that we're with them. Now, do you want to see just how loony these folks are? Listen to this.
If this were a science fiction game or some sort of futuristic setting game, or if this were just like Spelljammer and aliens, what would you guys think about the usage of species?
I think it's really a matter of...
From an anthropological perspective.
I think it's really a matter of aesthetic, right? Because a lot of people associate, like, if they're like, oh, species sounds so sci-fi, it's associated with the genre of sci-fi. But the problem still remains, because you still have to clearly define what you mean by species. If you're like, this alien is a distinct species from whatever humans are, why? Tell me why.
Yeah.
So now they want you to explain why this and this are different. That's not some sly edit, by the way, on my part. That's a supposedly educated man telling you this. How could you take anything he says seriously after that? But despite all of the culture war reasons for them to do this, I think I stumbled on perhaps the real reason he has a problem with all this. And let's just say that the green-eyed monster and Daniel are certainly not different species.
I brought on 2 folks to talk to me about it. I got Emma and Jeremy, 2 important voices in, this industry. Also, 2 people who worked as cultural consultants on similar projects as me. They're kind of leaning in on the fact that they said the term species was chosen in close coordination with multiple outside cultural consultants. I am really worried that they're basically using that as kind of like a, hey, we leaned in on a cultural consultant. They said that this was okay. And I don't like that. I'd really love to know who that individual is. Like,
so there it is. Poor Daniel just appears to be a little upset that he didn't get to wet his beak on this particular cultural consulting scam. And I love the veiled threat at the end there too. And that's the way it is with these people. They're so superficially nice up to a point, but they will turn on anyone they see as not being pure enough, or someone who's in their way of getting a payday, so they can stop eating ramen noodles for a week. And wouldn't it be hilarious if the consultant that they were talking about was revealed to be black? I mean, heaven forbid, what if it was Tanya DePass, who I recently did a video about? Now, Tanya's a bit rough around the edges, so I wonder how she'd react to this small, tender Asian boy calling her out like that. Now, I would pay good money to see her sit on this twerp until he cries uncle. How about you? All right, well, listen, that's all for today. Never give in to these people. They'll make you think their useless education is mightier than your common sense. And don't believe it. These are the dumbest, quote-unquote, smart people that you'll ever see in your lives. And never forget it. All right. So that's all. This is Double D signing off. And until we meet again, you guys take care. Goodbye.
What qualifies you to be a U.S. Senator? You have 60 seconds.
Hi. Good night, everybody.